Hey everyone, welcome back to Transform Your Workplace. This is a podcast that helps you lead with intention, shape stronger cultures, and build workplaces where people and businesses thrive together. Before we get into today's episode, I want to thank our sponsor, Xenium HR. At Xenium, we believe that developing people is one of the most important things an organization can do. That's why our learning and development programs go beyond check-the-box training. Whether it's leadership development, communication skills, or building accountability in the workplace, we help organizations grow their people with high-impact workshops and custom training solutions. Learn more about the learning and development programs at xeniumhr.com. Okay, today's guest is someone I've had the pleasure of working with and learning from over the years. Matt Wolfe is a partner at Brand3, a marketing strategist, and one of the longest-serving certified guides in Donald Miller's StoryBrand community. If you've ever felt like brand messaging just isn't landing for your organization, or if you struggle to get your sales, marketing, or internal culture aligned, this conversation is a must listen. Matt and I go way back to a project where he helped bring an old brand story to life, and the impact was so much bigger than just marketing. What started as a messaging exercise turned into a culture-shaping experience for our team. In this episode, we're going to get into why your brand isn't just a logo or website, it's the story you tell, how the StoryBrand framework creates clarity, connection, and alignment, the surprising way brand work can bridge silos between departments, and how a strong internal narrative can turn values into lived behavior. Matt really has a gift for taking big ideas and making them actionable. You're going to walk away from this conversation with a new understanding of how your organization's story can drive everything from culture to recruitment to growth. Let's dive in. Here's my conversation with Matt Wolfe. Matt, it is such a pleasure to have you on Transform Your Workplace. Thanks for coming on the podcast.
Same here. I'm always happy to see it.
Well, we've known each other a long time, and I'm trying to remember the year that we connected. I know it was over a mutual client, but I want to say it's like 2018, 2019 timeframe.
It's probably 2019. Yeah.
2019.
It was pre-pandemic.
So I think with that project, what we were working on was we were building a website for somebody. And this is like with my side hustle thing that I do. And I was introduced to you through our mutual client. And you just kind of blew my mind. Like I sort of known about this framework of building a story brand by Donald Miller, which we'll get into a little bit later. But the way in which you approached it with the storytelling, I thought that was incredible. Do you remember that project? You do a lot of these, so do you remember that?
I do remember it, and thank you, because we were looking at a website wireframe,
Yes.
which for anyone who doesn't know is like the blueprint of the website before you start doing the design piece. It's all about the storytelling. And so you were there listening to me really walk through the StoryBrand framework as it gets applied to a website and all the structure and strategy behind it. And I was nervous because you were a new person in the room. And then fortunately you liked it. So it was good.
I loved it because I'd read that book and I got it because I'm not a theater person. I know you've been on stage and I think you directed plays and things of that nature. So storytelling comes natural to you in this world of building a story brand tied into your previous life. Well, and this is the first time I'd really seen it put to life in a website.
Yeah.
And so after that project, I hired you at Xenium to do our messaging, and it went so much deeper than just marketing. And that's what I want to get into today, is it actually kind of transformed the way people talked about our brand.
Yeah.
Internally and externally. So I think I'm guilty of this, like in the past, where when people hear the word brand, they think graphics and logos and colors and the stuff that pops, but that's wrong, isn't it?
Yeah, it's totally wrong. It's only like half of it or maybe a third of it, depending on how you look at it. Yeah, we tell people your brand is so much more than your logo and your colors and your fonts. It's really the most important part of your brand is the messaging. It's the words. It's the story that you tell to help your ideal clients or customers understand that you're the perfect person to solve their problems. And without that story, and that strategic alignment between who you are as a business and the people that you are best equipped to serve. Without that, most of the marketing you're going to try and do is going to be fairly meaningless. Sounds harsh, but it's you're really setting it up to not succeed because it doesn't have the foundation that it needs. So brand it is like you said, it's the story that you tell internally and externally about who you are and who you serve and the difference that you make in the world.
Yeah, I think about it like on an external side, the way most like brands are marketing, they're like, look at us and all of our credentials and all the things that we've done, look how awesome we are. And internally it's kind of the same way. It's like, look at all the perks and benefits that we offer and how cool we are. Whereas that's not storytelling, and that is not how people connect. When people are coming to a website or interacting with their brand, it's a lot different, isn't it? Maybe kind of explain the framework difference between StoryBrand and how most people go to market.
Yeah, my partner, Orsolia at Brand 3, which is the name of our marketing agency, so you can tell we take brand seriously. But she would say that brand is a perception. It's how people perceive your brand. And I would build on that by saying the perception you want people to have is for them to say in their minds, oh, you're telling my story. Oh, I belong here. And so the basic corrective that we use the StoryBrand methodology, I'm certified in it. I'm one of the longest serving StoryBrand guides in the community at this point. And a big correction that it makes is most of us lead into our marketing or even just our face-to-face conversations about who we are as a company by talking about ourselves. So we will just naturally lean in and just start talking about like, hey, we do this and we're good at it because of this, this, and this. And what it really comes across as is someone coming up and saying, I'm good at this, I promise, please pick me.
It totally does. Yep.
But it's all we know. It's all we know is to take that tactic and just try and prove our worth, prove our value to the world. It's how we interview for jobs. It's how we write our resumes, whatever. But it doesn't work in marketing because whoever you're talking to, they see themselves as the protagonist of their own story. They see themselves as the hero of their own story. And if you jump in and you try to play that role as the hero and say, I've got all these great things, I can do all these wonderful things, I promise, pick me, it short circuits the conversation because they're waiting for you to explain what you can do for them. And specifically, they're waiting to hear you express that you understand what their goals are, what they want, and what they're up against, the problems that they're facing. And it's only in doing that first that you build a bridge of empathy with someone that makes them feel heard, that again makes them feel like, oh, you're telling my story, and makes them want to move forward and then hear about you. And if you just take those two steps first, then people will want to know more. Oh, you understand me. Oh, I'm in the right place. Okay, cool. Tell me more. And all the way back to that website example, that's what a website header needs to accomplish. A website header needs to let somebody know that they've just been dropped into their own story. But usually what we'll do is we'll put on our website, we are the preeminent leaders in the economic blah, blah, blah since 1909 and of South New Jersey. And I don't care. I'm done.
Right.
Because I don't know what it has to do with me.
Yeah. And we're mostly talking about it from an external standpoint, like with the clients that we may attract or repel based on how we're going to market. But I think of like how transformational it could be from a culture standpoint too, like the level of people you can attract if they understand you, your values, and what you're all about it culturally. They may want to come work for you. Talk about the power of this kind of work and how it defines a culture, like having that shared story and foundational beliefs.
Yeah, which is why, I've worked with Xenium. I know your story so well. And I came to you saying, hey, let's talk about the surprising way that brand impacts culture, which I don't think people expect to hear. But what we've learned at Brand 3 is, so we tell people we have a brand first approach to marketing. So everything I talked about earlier, if you don't do all that work to make sure you're telling the right story to the right people, your marketing will never be on a strong foundation. And it will never perform the way that it needs to. But when you create that brand story, you're talking about the people who you serve, who you've dedicated your mission and all that time and blood and sweat and tears and nights and weekends to. You're talking about what makes you unique and special as the people who help them and the connection between that and the difference that you make. So what happens is we've learned that brand story, it would almost be irresponsible to only use it for marketing because it can help in so many other areas of your business. It can help sales and marketing tell the same story and see themselves as part of the same story and stop fighting. so, like it can help that. It can help inform how you map out your customer journey so that the really inspiring words that they read on your website actually come true and they become advocates for your brand. But then it also inspires culture because you have a story to tell that can help everybody on your team understand on the same page, because they probably right now all have their own version of the story in their head.
Yeah.
But you can land on one shared story of these are the people we care about. This is what makes us unique and special as a company and how we serve them. And this is the difference we make in the world. And when people start to share a story like that, that gives them a shared sense of identity that mission, vision, and value statements, even though they're important, can't deliver.
Yeah. Yeah, that's so wise of you to say that, because I think I see a lot of people write their mission, vision, values, maybe even their purpose, but just statements alone without a story behind it don't hold a lot of weight. And we actually, as Xenium, we kind of fell into this trap for a while. We had a values statement. I think we lived those values, but it wasn't until we created a manifesto, and I'm not going to like recite it or anything, but there is a section that says like, people work, but not everybody loves their work. And that's why we're here to change the game. And we're here to transform the workplace for you. And it wasn't until like people started really telling that story and we started telling that externally, even in our client video case studies that we do, which is very external, our team would be consuming those too. And that would align us around this whole transforming your workplace messaging. I even renamed the podcast to align with that. We talk about it internally all the time.
Yeah.
And it is that shared purpose. Everybody realizes what role they play in that story.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. You guys changed the way I think about HR when we worked together, like for the better, to understand what was possible in terms of culture. And when I think about the work we did together, you had that manifesto before we worked together on Xenium's messaging.
Yeah, I think it was just like maybe a year before, but just the manifesto by itself without like the rework of all of the other messaging, it wasn't quite making the same impact.
Yeah. And I feel like, and you correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel like the pieces that we added to that and the work we did together, then we started talking about your ideal audience.
Yeah.
And unpacking who that was. And it's not like you don't know who that is, but it's different when you all sit around and talk about it together and again, gain a shared understanding. So we begin to get a picture of all these small businesses that you serve, which tends to be your main clients, who have hit this massive wall of HR, this impossible to climb mountain that just keeps getting taller somehow. It's like Mount Rainier is growing over Seattle of all the regulations and the things that they're facing. And you come alongside them and give them the resources they need. You put a team of, last I knew, like sort of 80-ish HR experts around them that expand their capabilities in a way they never could, and then empower them to not only get past this juggernaut of stuff that has to get done with HR, but then move forward to the good stuff of building culture. But see, in those pieces that we were talking about, now it's just a little bit more specific, because this image of you, as I would call you guys, champions of small business, came out of that and begins to fuel the team and the staff and how you talk about what you do.
And I think being an HR company, we always kind of had a leg up on most organizations as far as like alignment around values and our mission. We just like with your help and with the manifesto that we had created, helped tie us together even more. But I think other organizations have got to struggle with this. They probably don't have a marketing department to help kind of reshape that common language. They might not have an HR department. And if companies are struggling with alignment and they're having challenges, you even mentioned it, sales, marketing, fighting, that is a thing within organizations, not as Xenium, because, like with Angela, like we worked together for 15 years, we're tight.
Yeah.
But for those that may be siloed because they don't have a shared story, like where do you even start with this kind of work?
Yeah. I wrote a LinkedIn post the other day that talked about that sales and marketing divide through the lens of Cobra Kai. Have you watched Cobra Kai on Netflix?
I think I saw the first season or two. I just don't watch a lot of TV anymore.
Yeah, most of the world.
I'm sure you don't either with a kid, but
no. But this was like the one I made time for, right, with my kid and everything, because I'm a big Karate Kid fan. But okay. But here's the reason I talked about Cobra Kai is because there's this rivalry between Johnny and Daniel from the Karate Kid, just like sales and marketing. You can decide which one's which, but there's this rivalry, right, that they carried into this series. And when we watched the movie, The Karate Kid in the 80s, we only got Daniel's perspective. And so Johnny's the bully. And the brilliant thing that they did in the series is they let you see both guys' perspective. And when they did that, you really understood that they saw themselves as part of different stories, as different narratives. They really saw what had happened in the Karate Kid movie from a totally different perspective, and you could understand why they couldn't get along and get on the same page. And the amazing thing they did, the series just ended, and I'm heartbroken about it. But
Oh, no.
over the course of 6 seasons, they did something incredible, and they managed to get these guys to arrive in the same story together, and where they finally realized that they were fighting the same fight, and they were characters in the same narrative with the same goals. So that's what a brand story can do for sales and marketing, because usually they just feel like you're in a different story than I am. No one's listening. You're not supporting me. Once they begin to see that they're part of a shared story, then you can build on that, and you can finally have them cooperate in ways that are really important without stepping on each other's toes. So marketing can provide really killer pitch decks, proposals, sales scripts, all sorts of resources that will help the sales guys align on the same story and really give them a head start and feel empowered in how they talk about the company. Because the best thing that having a strategic framework like StoryBrand does is you have all these things you can say about your company and who you are. A framework helps you understand what to say when. Mm-hmm. So you can relieve a lot of stress for the sales guys, but then let them shine and do their thing in all the relationships that they build and just take off and run with it. And then let them come back and let marketing know, this thing that we thought was really going to make a lot of sense, I keep having to explain that. Do you think we could work on that? Or, this thing that we thought was really going to be profound and like make people light up, their eyes are glazing over. So maybe, when I'm at the restaurant with them across the table with a real human, while marketing's over on their side looking at analytics from a website, right? Like they can work together. Mm-hmm. And all you got to do, and you don't have to overthink that. All you got to do is make sure they start talking. Yeah. And the story becomes the catalyst. The messaging, strategic messaging is the catalyst for them to have great conversations. So you can take that then to I was thinking about this earlier today. You can take that into other departments and other areas of the business. Because the last thing you want to do is have this great strategic message and then just give it to everyone and be like, hey, go read this and figure out what to do with it. Just
doesn't work that way.
That's why your mission and vision statements are sitting on a web page that no one can remember what they are. These things come to life. You don't share the story until you talk about it. So again, you don't need to overthink this, but you can create forums where your support team as leadership, you can say, we just created this story about who we are. Hey, let's walk through this together. Let's sort of stop at each little beat, each paragraph, and see what kind of reactions we have. And then on the back end of that, let's brainstorm some ideas of what this means, of how we could improve what we do. Now they're going to internalize it and turn it into action. Otherwise, it will just sit.
Yeah. No, yeah. And I've talked about this on the podcast and in other episodes, but years ago, we created this recognition program called the Wow Cards. And we have all the value statements on there with behavior statements. So that's the beauty of how we reframed all of our stuff is we got these value statements and what we stand for, but we have action and behavior statements that go along with it. So we know what truly does this mean and how we show up. And with the Wow Cards, people would select what value statement or behavior statement that somebody had done. And then usually it backs up with a story about how somebody helped another person on the team or how they went and showed up to a client and served them. And all of that is public. We share these in all team meetings. We used in the early pandemic days, we'd record videos that people can watch of all the Wow Cards that people got. And what it did was help connect around that shared story. Mm-hmm. Because when people realize that they're not playing hero ball and they're actually guides within a story, yeah, everybody's more connected. And that's, I think, the biggest thing that I've always felt about the StoryBrand methodology is we're not heroes in the story. Who we're serving actually is. And once people realize that, then we're more connected than ever.
Mm-hmm. Help them win the day. I love that you did that, though, because that is the next step of application. There's a shared story, and yes, then there are those specific stories. Again, internally and externally. Yeah, how do you wrap around and celebrate the success stories of your team, living into what that is? And then how do you stop and celebrate some of the results? That's the hardest thing to do, man, is to stop and take time to appreciate the wins, because we're so busy moving forward. And by the same token, the other thing I've really learned not to take for granted the power of a great discovery session with people in terms of discovering this story, finding their brand story. Because what happens is we do these exercises and then 3, 5, 10 years go by and suddenly we're a different organization. We're a new business. We're a new nonprofit. We serve new people. We have new services that transformed how we think about ourselves, but nobody's had the time to sit and talk and find a shared understanding again about, wait, but who are we now? And who is our ideal target now? And what does that mean for us and our identity? And man, the work we do in discovery, the exercises are pretty simple. The questions are usually the same, but it's what happens in between asking the questions where all the power is.
So profound. I just had this conversation with somebody recently too, and I've probably had many conversations in similar form, but it's like every organization has a culture, whether it's intentional or not. But what you're honing in on, everybody's stopping and pausing and going through these exercises around the brand, what our culture may be, the messaging, the story, and you're sort of just getting it all out there and you're processing it. You're like, who's our customer? Who's our ideal employees? Like all of these things that if you just let work happen, then nothing's intentional. And like you said, it could take a form that you never intended in the first place.
Mm-hmm.
And so stopping and pausing and going through these exercises is really probably the first step in that process before you can probably start executing on it. Wouldn't you think?
Yeah. So what happens, and it might even, there's companies where that lack of understanding has caused a lot of damage, that lack of shared story. You've also got companies where it feels like things are going pretty good, but it's still like everyone thinks they understand the story of who you are. So I don't know, like we're a family-owned business who prides ourselves, we're plumbers. We pride ourselves in only asking people to spend money on what they need and educating them along the way. They might have sort of some of those pieces and that much. But when you really get down and you start to define, okay, but who are those people we serve? What difference do we make? What's really special about how we do the work? You create an alignment that you create a highway for shared energy and shared momentum and purpose that wasn't there before. And so it drives growth. Culture always drives growth. We've talked about that with Xenium because you guys just do it from an HR perspective. But we've talked a lot about how building a positive, empowering workplace culture does have a bottom line to it, does have revenue growth attached to it, or a stable workforce or the ability to recruit the talent that you need.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'd done an interview years ago with, he's now a friend, Sean Bussey, and he wrote this book called Marketing from the Inside Out. And it was just the fact that you develop culture and you take care of your people, it's going to have an impact downstream on the customers and how they show up with them. So I always love that approach and that idea. But what StoryBrand framework offers is something pretty unique. And it really just kind of goes a little deeper in terms of like, well, how do we actually execute on this? Now, we've teased that framework a little bit. You're an expert in this area. Maybe for listeners who've never heard of StoryBrand, what are the kind of the main components and the ideas behind it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. StoryBrand's created by Donald Miller, so credit where credit's due. And he built a community of all of us who could go out and, and share the technique. And he's gone on to write a lot of really successful books about business. But this was his first big contribution in the business world. It's a strategic framework for narrative marketing messaging. In other words, telling the story, what I said earlier, inviting someone into their own story. What's really awesome about it is that it is a proven framework. So it means a couple things. It means that if you work with someone who uses this in their marketing, they're not going to be sort of guessing at what might work, which is very common in working with marketing agencies, where it's almost like someone's creating a work of modern art and they're going to like, we'll throw this on the wall and see if people figure out what this is. So the StoryBrand framework is, here's a proven approach to take all the things we know about who your people are and who your business are, put it in the right order. What they did is they went back and they studied classic forms of storytelling. What has always worked? It most closely resembles like Joseph Campbell's hero's journey that people know if you know much about Star Wars or comic books and things like that, like I do, people know Joseph Campbell. But the framework goes like this. You have a hero, which is the people who you serve. You have a main character in the story who has a problem. And then they meet a guide who gives them a plan and a call to action on a journey that will end in either failure or success. So there's 7 basic elements there: the character, the problem, the guide they meet, the plan that the guide gives them, the call to action, and then the final outcome. Every story has a happy or a sad ending or somewhere in between. In marketing, it's a happy ending.
Right. Proven framework. That's why.
That's right. So there's a few things that are really important about that. With the character piece, we have to define what that character wants. We need to figure out what is the top of mind goal that they come into the story with. What do they believe is most important for them to accomplish? It's got to be one thing, because what happens is people start talking about 10 things. Out of anxiety, we'll start talking about 10 things that we think people want. And then you lose clarity of the brand and the message. So you got to find that one thing. And the reason I'm harping on the thing about what they want is we are often tempted in marketing to sort of push ahead and tell people what we know they need. We have solutions, we have things that can help them, and we'll try and talk about that first. They're not ready to hear that yet. So we're going to talk about what do they want, what are their goals. Then we're going to talk about a problem that, again, that they perceive. Not that we're going to teach them that they have a problem, but what do they perceive as the problem that is in their way, their biggest obstacle to getting that thing. And in the StoryBrand framework, it's really cool because we look at it from different angles. We look at an external angle about it. What's the nuts and bolts problem? Just practical thing going on in the world. And then how's that making them feel internally as an emotion? And then we have a thing where the business responds. We call it a philosophical statement. But what it means is it's where we come alongside the person we want to work with and say, you know what? It matters that you solve this problem. And we're here with you in it. And we have a way to help you. Now, in everything I just said, instead of coming at them and saying, I'm good at this, I promise, pick me. If you put your collateral together in the right way, what you've done, like on a website header in the section beneath it, you've said, I get what you want. I get what you're up against. And you've created a bridge of empathy for someone to feel heard and to want to know where you're going next. The next thing you're going to do is they're going to meet the guide. That's you. The business is the guide, or the nonprofit, the organization is the guide who has been there before, faced this problem, and knows how to help them find their way. So this has parallels in movies like Star Wars. In Star Wars, you are Yoda. Your business is Obi-Wan Kenobi. You are the wizened, experienced guide with the strength and the wisdom and the knowledge and the scars and everything from the journey you've been on to help the hero win the day. And every good hero in a story needs that guide to come along and train them and equip them. Karate Kid, it's Mr. Miyagi. I could talk about that all day long. But the hero's the weak character. Daniel doesn't know what it means to wax on, wax off. Luke Skywalker doesn't even know what a lightsaber is, let alone how to swing one. They need that person to come alongside. And so what this means for you as a business is you're going to arrive to tell your story at a moment when it's welcomed, when someone feels heard, and from a position of greater immediately understood strength and authority. So you don't have to say, I'm good at this, I promise, pick me. You get to come in and say, I've been there, let's fix it. It's a whole different conversation. So there's a lot that goes into how we talk about the guide, but most important, we're going to help them understand what is truly unique about your brand and in how you solve their problem. We're going to do that in a bunch of different ways. We'll talk about what's unique, your authority, your testimonials, your social proof, all that. But all of that is not enough to get them to move forward. They need to know, okay, but where are you taking me? I get that you're good at what you do, but where are we going? That's where the plan comes into place. The call to action is really important on a website. It's literally like, do we have buttons that clearly tell people how to spend money with us? And like 70 to 80% of websites, it probably used to be 90%. I think StoryBrand improved it. But 70 to 80% of websites aren't actually asking people to do something that's good for them. They have a plan, that call to action, and then we're going to paint a picture for how life looks better with the success. Then remember, there's something to be lost if you don't take action. And that's the failure piece of the thing. So all of this is helpful for messaging, but it's also a mindset thing, which is why it translates into culture. Because I work with business owners all the time to understand, like, you've always been shy about asking people to purchase your stuff, to donate to your organization, because you thought you were asking people to give you money. When you are the guide, you are in a position of service and of responsibility to help someone solve their problem, knowing that you've created a great way to do it. You should ask them to move forward. You're trying to help them improve their lives. And the reason I bring that up is not only does that make it easier to sell stuff, but that, again, is an ethos that will filter into your culture, right? If you can help your team understand, we're not asking people to spend money and approve of us. We have built something that makes a difference, and we're going to lean into that authority and that identity, and we're going to serve and we're going to help people. And you can give them that heart and impulse with a story.
I have an exact example of that from this week. I went to a luncheon for Big Brothers Big Sisters Columbia Northwest, and the CEO, Beach Pace, she got up on stage and said, we're not a nonprofit, we're a movement. And after that, people heard the stories, So the storytelling, they captivated people. And then they ask for, will you help us in this movement? And then people, of course, opened up their pocketbooks and donated through a QR code or whatever, like I did.
Mm-hmm.
And storytelling moves people. And I think you're absolutely right. Like if we hone in our messages as a business and we do some storytelling, not only is it going to attract customers, but it builds the foundation for attracting the right people to achieve what we want to achieve as an organization, but help, because we're the guides, to help our customers or whoever we're serving achieve their dreams.
Yeah.
Powerful stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Execution is not easy. And I know we have a lot of time left, but being that you're a marketing agency, Brand3, you know how to execute on this stuff. So if a business has done the work to build their StoryBrand framework as the guide, what are some ways we can integrate this into our workplace, whether it's external or internal, to help reinforce that culture and to get the right people on the bus?
I think step one is the thing I said earlier. You're going to get people together to talk it through, reflect on it, absorb it, and then figure out what to do with it. Man, what kind of action can this inspire? And again, I don't want to sound too easy, but you also don't want to overcomplicate it. And sometimes those conversations are the hardest thing to do, and to get everyone to sit down and be open and talk. So I really do think it's creating an intentional strategy to impart the story to the team from different departments, different perspectives, and have them chew through it and figure out what to do with it. But you also want to make sure you are applying it to where your story is told. So again, you're not just going to add that story to your website. You want to help the sales team add it to proposals. And it's the difference of, okay, in the examples we've talked about, most proposals begin with, we are really good at blah, 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 because if we don't say this, we're afraid that you won't buy our stuff. And instead, the first page of your proposal is an opportunity to remind people of the problem that you talked about solving 2 weeks ago when you had your first meeting, or 3 days ago or whatever, to pull them out of their busy day back into the story and be like, oh yeah, okay, this is why I wanted this. And then talk about the plan and why you're good at what you do. So you can reshape that. It's your chance to change. When you talk about building your team, it's your chance to change your job descriptions. It's a chance to change the stuff that you're putting out on Indeed and wherever you're looking, which will help preemptively help someone else get a sense of the story they could be a part of. So you want to start applying that messaging wherever you are telling your story. And then I guess the other big piece would be, so it's conversation, application, and then repetition, I think would be the third thing. And what I mean by that is you don't want to do this just once, because then it also won't stick. In the EOS, system, people will read their value statement at quarterly meetings, to the team, things like that. They will renew the story over and over again. I would suggest not reading it at them, but opening up conversation. But the idea is the same. You get 2 months, 3 months down the road, and you need to do it again and renew and have those conversations again.
So well said, Matt. Well, this has been such a fun discussion. I know we could go forever on this. I think this is a good, probably introduction for a lot of people who have never heard of this model, but also just not understanding how their story and their brand actually makes an impact on culture. So I really appreciate you just dropping all that knowledge on me. You're a wealth of knowledge. You're active on social and stuff. Where can people connect with you and learn more about your work and Brand3 and everything that you're working on?
Yeah, brand3.net is so the word brand, the number 3, and then .net is our URL. People can find me on LinkedIn, and my tag there is Matt Wolfe Marketing. So you'll find me there, and you'll see the information about Brand3. I still have my own site, so people can learn more about my background. And you mentioned the theater thing. I come to this from an arts background and a lifetime of storytelling. So there's a story there that doesn't really fit on Brand3's site if people are interested how that happened. That's just mattwolfemarketing.com. Matt, M-A-T-T, Wolfe with an E, marketing.com. But Brand3's, our thing is we worked with service-based businesses and nonprofits. So anyone who provides a service, B2B, B2C, and we view nonprofit obviously as a place of service. We look for clients who have some sort of proven ability to deliver great service, to take great care of the people that we're going to send to them, the qualified leads, the people we're going to send their way. That feels good on our end, but we also know that if they have that ability and we can get the right people to them, they're going to grow because they can take great care of people. So if you go to our website, you'll see we're looking for 5-star businesses, 5-star average reviews on ratings that people give them as some proof. And there are other ways to prove that, but we're looking for that. People who deliver great service, who have built something incredible, but are just banging their head against the wall trying to figure out, God, why isn't our marketing connecting? Why aren't we reaching the right people? And so then we do all the stuff I talked about earlier. We go back and fix the foundation, find that story that's going to tell the right story to the right people first. And then we're a full service agency and we build everything on top of that. But what we won't do is come to you and say, you should do like an ad campaign. You should do more social media stuff. You should do like more of the stuff that's not working, and we'll be happy to be paid for it. We won't do that. We're going to make sure there's a strategic foundation beneath everything that happens.
My guest today has been Matt Wolfe, partner at Brand 3 and a friend. Matt, thanks for coming on.
Yeah, same here.
Hey, thanks so much for tuning in for today's episode of Transform Your Workplace. The content on this show is strictly for general information and educational purposes only, so that you can go transform your workplace in a positive way. The views, thoughts, and opinions expressed on the show are the guest's own and don't represent the views, thoughts, and opinions of either Xenium HR, the sponsor of the show, or me, the host, Brandon Laws. Additionally, Xenium HR or myself, Brandon Laws, doesn't endorse any guest, their business, or any organization they represent, so discretion is advised. We encourage you to work with a trusted advisor to find a custom approach that fits your organization's needs. Thanks for tuning in to today's episode.